All right, so in today's video, we're going to be dissecting all of the Spanish that's said in both Resident Evil 4 Remake trailers. Now, those trailers, of course, being the story trailer and as well as the extended gameplay trailer. Now, I do want to preface before we start that there are certain scenes in these trailers where the audio is just way too, muddied. It's way too just mixed together. There's a lot of scenes where sometimes characters are speaking and it's fading out, and then you're getting another hard sound that's fading in, so that it kind of just, overtakes the whole scene, so you can't really hear what they're actually saying. And so if you do speak Spanish, let me know what you think down below. But in any case, let's start with the first trailer. And so we're actually going to start with the story trailer. Now, I'm going to play it right now. All right, so we're starting out with the story trailer. All right, so here's a really great example of what I was basically talking about. Just right here, they were speaking, and then there was really hard, really loud metal grinding sound. But what they were basically saying here at the beginning was, La luz de tu gloria ilumina hacia el paraíso, acepta este. And this is what it basically translates to, is the light of your glory illuminates towards paradise. Accept this. Now, as soon as we get to this, or este in Spanish, it actually, again, that's when we start hearing that really hard, really high volume scraping of metal. So we can't really, separate that. The audio's already done. So even if I cranked up the volume, which I did, I kept listening to it over and over again, it's really hard. But what we can basically ascertain about what they're talking about just from the overall scene, since if we remember correctly, this is actually the same scene or the same area as in the OG Resident Evil 4, when specifically in separating Eder, you play as Eder and you wake up and they're basically going to cut off your head with a huge axe, and Eder wakes up, and then you start playing as Eder. Now, that's actually the same spot that you can visit with Leon, and it's right underneath the monorail right before you fight Chief Mendez. Now, this is what's very interesting, is that this scene specifically states that the light of your glory illuminates towards paradise. Accept this, and that's where it cuts off. We can't hear, but what we can ascertain is accept this offering. That's what I'm guessing. I'm just making an educated guess as to what this could be. And again, it could be either sacrifice, since we know from the OG Resident Evil 4, that's obviously where they sacrifice people for Las Plagas. But since this scene in particular, we actually see Ashley being right here, it almost seems like as this area was a little changed for the remake, and it was actually the area where I'm assuming is where Ashley gets infected with Las Plagas, or the parasite. And so this scene would actually make more sense in that context, mostly because it almost seems as if the members of Los Iluminados are actually talking and conversing and kind of praying to the parasite, since it is an occult, so it would make a lot more sense in that context. Now, we're going to continue the next part. Now, we just heard that really scraping metal, and now we're actually hearing Ashley, because that's the next scene. We hear that she's being basically gagged with some rope, so it's hard, again, to decipher what they're saying in this couple of seconds here. Now, what I could decipher here, and again, if you speak Spanish, let me know down in the comments. Maybe you heard another word that sticks out, because like I said, I cranked up the gain. I try to hear it as much as possible. I got a second opinion. And so what I could basically decipher is muestra por la luz y el pecado en el nombre del paraíso en tu sedo en. And again, that's as pretty much that I could decipher. Now, what that translates to is, show us through the light our sins in the name of paradise, and we yield to ... We can't really decipher what they're saying. Now, I was hearing a couple of different words. Like, for example, I was hearing patasmo. But that's not really a word. Now, I try to put on Google Translate. Google Translate does tell me that patasmo does mean in agony. And that would kind of make sense, since, again, what they're saying is, show us through the light our sins in the name of paradise. So it's the same thing that they mentioned before. They're talking about that paradise again. And it says we yield, or en tu sedo could also be translated to we give or we offer up to you. In patasmo, again, in patasmo is what I heard, but that's not a Spanish word. I think Google Translate just broke down, doesn't really work. But again, they said in agony, so it would actually be we offer you in agony. or we give you, like we yield to your agony. But again, empatasmo doesn't really make sense. I tried searching it up. It's not a word that basically appears when you search up what does this mean in Spanish. And so I think it was just Google Translate just screwing up. But that's basically what I heard. Now again, I did hear empatasmo, empacasmo. I also heard, and again, those are not words, but it's really hard because that you get a rise of audio after that kind of just blurs what you're hearing. You know what I mean? So it's very hard. But again, if you speak Spanish, let me know down in the comments what it says. What do you hear when you hear that ending of this phrase? Because to me, like I was saying, I'm hearing empatasmo, but that's not really a word. Now, the next scene, we actually get a villager screaming something. Now, again, it's very hard to make out what he's saying. Even though I boost the gain, it's almost as if it was cut mid-sentence and we're not hearing the full, words that he's basically mentioning. So it's very hard to decipher what he's saying in that particular scene. It almost sounds as if he's saying, I have some tazos or I have some cups. Again, I don't really hear what he's saying here. It's very hard. Again, let me know down in the comments if you know what he's saying. I would really like to know. Now, the next scene, we actually get a bunch of los iluminados, which, by the way, actually means the illuminated one, which you could also translate as the Illuminati. But in any case, yeah, so we go on and we listen. Yeah, and it's just a bunch of mumbled up, phrases, bunch of faded in audio. Again, it's really hard to decipher that particular instance. Anyways, later on in this story trailer, this is the last part of the story trailer where we hear some Spanish, is right when Ashley actually speaks. So again, we're getting a lot of different audio coming from different sounds, and it's really hard to decipher, but I'll play it right now.
What is that? What do we do?
Yeah, it's almost as if they're saying, like, the only word that I'm catching is sé que, so which would translate to I know. So again, it's a very mid-sentence, can't really hear. I'm hearing an old lady speaking, and we know from Resident Evil 4 that that's one of the villager enemies is, an old type of lady, an old man, you know what I mean? So again, very hard to decipher. And now we're actually going to go on to the next trailer, the extended gameplay trailer, because there is a particular scene, and I think it's the only scene, the only Spanish that we hear in that trailer, and we can actually hear what he says. But before we get to that, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing because I post Resident Evil videos every single week. But in any case, let's hear the next trailer. Now, the next Spanish scene that we actually hear is in the extended gameplay trailer, and in that particular trailer, it's right when Leon enters the first house in the village, and he actually goes up and picks up a walkie-talkie over what appears to be a dead person. Now he picks up that walkie-talkie, and there's another person on the other line saying,
"Hey,
he basically says, te necesito apoyo, or I think what he's basically saying, again, it's hard because there's so much sound happening, but what we can make out from that is necesito apoyo, or what you could translate that to, I need help. Now, Leon later on says, I read you.
I read you. What's your situation?"
And he says, now the guy on the radio actually says, it's very hard to make out because there's really hard, that kind of trailer music going over, but what I can decipher is he's saying "¿Quién es hoy?" So again, that doesn't really make sense. So I think what he's trying to say is, who are you? Like, who am I speaking to, or who are you? ¿Quién es hoy? But again, it's very hard because But anyways, and then after the guy screams in pain, he obviously gets killed on the other line of the thing. Now, what I actually think is probably going on in this scene in particular is that the guy is obviously getting attacked. He's saying, I need help. He's calling on the walkie-talkie. That person that's dead on the floor looks like he's wearing a hat is probably the two officers that you enter the village with in the car, the ones that drive you to the village, and they get kidnapped. And so he finds a dead officer there, grabs his walkie-talkie. The other officer's like, I need help. That's what's happening. And then Leon grabs the walkie-talkie and he's like, yeah, I read you. And the guy says, who are you? I think he's talking to the people that are approaching him, because right after we hear screams that are happening, so he obviously gets killed. And we later see him obviously getting hanged in the Midtown Square, I guess. And so again, the remake is changing the scenes because in reality, this guy was apparently supposed to be in the main town square or the plaza, whatever you want to call it, the middle of the village, and then the other guy gets killed in the del lago, in the lake, essentially later on. But I think they're just changing a couple of things because it is a reimagining, it is a remake. Well, if you guys enjoyed the video, then click this video if you guys want to see my scene by scene comparison from the original and also comparing it with the new scenes that we see from Resident Evil 4 Remake. Anyways, thanks for watching.